Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Jean Jarzinski. I am a physical therapist and a board certified hippotherapy clinical specialist. And I am thrilled to be here with you guys today to give you guys more information and really empower you with the knowledge so that when you look into different horse and equine activities or therapies, you know exactly what you're looking for so that you are getting all of the amazing benefits that you are hoping for, whether it's for yourself or for a loved one. So really, we're going to hit all of these course outline points. Why the horse, therapy versus recreation, choosing different programs and the benefits and side effects of all of these programs, as well as some frequently asked questions, because I only get you guys for a little bit of time. So what I did is I just took, I think it's 4 questions of like my most frequently asked questions. And these are questions that I'm asked on like a daily basis or weekly basis. And so just to try to help you guys as you are going through and figuring out which of these programs might suit your family or individuals best. And that's really what the main point of this webinar is. I really want to empower you with the knowledge to choose the correct equine program for you or your loved one. So I'm really hopeful that this will help you on that journey. But before we get started, this is actually where we just pause, because when we are partnering with horses, it's unlike most other activities or therapies out there, because this is really a dyad. We are partnering 2 living beings with sensory systems, motor systems. We're going to partner those together to get the benefit for both. But in order to really understand and feel what that means, we're just going to take a minute to set our own stage.
Sit comfortably in your chair and keep your eyes open. Relaxing breaths in through your nose, all the way into your belly. Gently release it. Breathe out through the mouth. North is calm, is with all.
Okay, so now that we are nice and ready, let's talk about why the horse. So partnering with horses for the well-being of humans has been documented since 460 BC with Hippocrates, who wrote some really wonderful things about the positive advantages of horseback. And since then, we have learned and grown so much, but we really owe a lot of this to the Greeks. It was the Greek soldiers who realized that placing their wounded soldiers on horseback and taking them back to base camp, those that went on horseback ended up not only physically having better improvements, but also their morale was better. And so the Greek soldiers really took this into account as they were thinking about the best ways to help the soldiers after combat, whether they were having physical or mental emotional difficulties after war. So the Greeks are the ones who started it all. But now we're going to fast forward to 2022, which is where we are now. And we really now have the research to show what those Greek soldiers had known all along. We will be separating and zooming in on each of these areas as we talk. But the truth is, we can't separate one out. So we're going to look at that mental well-being. We're going to look at the emotional well-being, the sensory, and the physical. And we're making these into 4 columns, because these are usually the areas that people are looking at most when they're looking at partnering with horses. But the really cool part is we can't separate a horse's physical attributes just the same way I can't separate your physical attributes. A horse is going to give all of these attributes, whether it is our main intention or not. So this is where it gets really cool, is because the horses give this holistic nature. So I am a PT. I am addressing physical therapy needs, movement patterns, all by partnering with equine movement to facilitate those patterns for my participants. However, I often hear clients say, oh my goodness, little Johnny was babbling the whole way home. That speech, even though it is not my main objective, because I am working on that physical being, I'm also implementing sensory integration for them, mental and emotional well-being. I can't separate them out. I can't take that away from the horse. The horse is going to give all of that, but I am zooming in to make sure that I am making sure that physical well-being is met. But it's really true. You're hitting all of them. And this is exactly why partnering with horses is so powerful for so many people, and especially the clients that I know that I've had the immense pleasure to work with. Without even trying, the horses add all of this. So we're just going to take a quick look at a couple of the research on all 4 of these areas so that you can have a better idea before we start really diving into the different programs. So the physical well-being. 2 of these research articles, hippotherapy improved postural control and sitting, dynamic balance. All of this happened within 24 sessions for children with cerebral palsy. And that was a great research article. And what's really amazing is it doesn't have to just be for cerebral palsy. And you'll see when we start talking about the physical well-being, really truly how the horse's movement helps with all of these. Doesn't not matter what the diagnosis is. Horseback riding induces muscle strength, balance, flexibility, all of that combined for either therapeutic or therapy or leisurely activities. And what's really cool on this one, guys, is this research looked at the cardiac output. And what they realized is that if you put someone on a horse that has a higher cardiac output than the human, meaning they're in a better fitness than the human, when they are walking, it is actually going to get the person getting a cardiac workout as well. So that's really amazing for some of our children who maybe don't necessarily like movement. For some of our children who are non-ambulatory, this is really powerful for them to get them up and moving, getting that cardiac going, actually getting some cardiac exercise in there as well. Like, these are amazing benefits for so many. Then we look at the sensory well-being, and there you can't deny the horse is this huge sensory being. Being around horses, just alone, the different smells, textures, sights, all of that plays in to helping your participants, helping your children, helping yourself. It all brings it together and gives you a whole holistic way of being. And the second research was hippotherapy by affecting multiple systems, such as sensory, muscle, limbic, vestibular, ocular. All of that together led simultaneously to better social and educational benefits for those that were involved. That's astounding. And all of that is because, again, we go in and we zoom in on what we're really trying to focus on. But by no means does that mean those other little areas that we were looking at are put to the sidelines. The mental well-being and the emotional well-being are so closely linked that most of the research combines them, which makes sense because they really are so tightly linked. But the one that I really want to bring to you guys is the second point, where it says they are actually looking at the caregivers of those with neurodivergent children. And what they found was that equine therapy created a safe haven, a place to reaffirm the parent and caregiver's identity, and helped nourish the emotional self of the caregiver or parent. That is beautiful. You parents, if you are a parent or caregiver, you do a lot. You do a lot for your children, and it's amazing and beautiful. And as a therapist, I am always in awe of everything that you guys do. And so don't just think about this for your possible child or some loved one. Also think about it for yourself. Don't forget to take care of yourself, and horses are a way that can help do that as well. There's been lately a lot more research on PTSD and putting them together with equines. And the research there has been really beautiful, showing that it allows them to learn how to foster relationships. It allows trust to build. So these are all really important things, not only for PTSD or trauma survivors, but really for the general public. And I think we can all agree, especially coming out of COVID, all of our social skills were not great. And being with the horses allows some people to kind of practice and get comfortable expressing themselves again. And through that, gradually they get confidence and they start expressing themselves with others. So these are the organizations that took part in a 2018 summit. And these are the ones that I'm bringing up only because they were the ones partaking in the summit. The three biggest ones you see here is PATH International. PATH International is just this huge organization that really goes about accrediting instructors and centers to perform equine assisted activities. These are mostly your recreation activities. This is your therapeutic or adaptive riding, as well as your equine specialists. So those are the people that support the mental health providers and the teachers or coaches. In all of those sessions, having an equine specialist is really important because you want to make sure that that horse is safe in those environments. The horse is calm. It's safety for everyone, not just the horse, also the participant and either the teacher, therapist, whomever might be involved. Then we look at EGALA. EGALA came in 1999, and they are truly the mental health professionals in this situation. They have an amazing program. And so these EGALA centers are the ones who are really heading up, doing most of the PTSD with veterans as well as individuals. What they do is beautiful and very powerful. And we have the American Hippotherapy Association. And this is the organization that dictates the best practices for PTs, OTs, and speech. So this is just for therapists who want to integrate equine movement into their treatment plans. And they were established in 2004. And then you'll see there are two more at the bottom, and these two are newer in variety, less than about 10 years old. However, they are making really great gains in some of the equine assisted learning, along with equine assisted coaching, which I do believe is getting more and more popular. But today's presentation is going to combine all of these groups. And because each one focuses on a different aspect of partnering with horses. But again, don't forget, guys, we're going to be looking at each one separately, but by no means does that mean we are negating the others. They are all going to be put together. You are going to get the physical, you're going to get the sensory, you're going to get the emotional, and you're going to get the mental. It all comes together as a package deal. So you might be thinking, Melissa, why are you talking about this terminology summit? It's actually quite important because what happens, and the terminology gets so confusing for so many people, and that is the number one question that I am often asked. And we're going to see that on the next slide, what that is. But terminology is really confusing. People just throw these terms out and everyone assumes everyone knows what they're speaking about, but it's not true. And research is even more confusing, unfortunately. And the reason that's important is insurance companies need the research to say that this is a proven therapy choice and not experiential, or and does not have the background that it needs. There's lots of research, but the terms get mucky. And that makes it really difficult for us to prove that it is working when the terminology is using the wrong term. So insurance reimbursement is a huge one. And unfortunately, that impacts just about everyone who wants to find these services, because if your insurance isn't going to pay for it, it can be expensive. And we're going to talk about that in the frequently asked questions. So don't worry. But what they did at the summit was they separated them into three groups. So you have your therapy group, right, which is your PT, OT, speech. And they also put in the counseling in that part as well. Then we look at the learning, equine assisted learning, equine assisted personal development. And then we have the horsemanship side, which is just being with the horses to learn how to be with the horses. So that's your adaptive or therapeutic riding, interactive vaulting, adaptive vaulting, driving. Those are where you're going to be looking at for that horsemanship part. But here it is, guys. The number one question I am asked on a daily basis: is hippotherapy and therapeutic riding the same thing? The answer is no. No, they are definitely not the same thing. There's huge differences between the two. So let's look at what those differences are. With hippotherapy, hippotherapy is done with a therapist, meaning your PT, OT, or speech. It has to be a licensed professional. And our objective is to obtain functional goals. Look on the other side, which is recreation, and that is your therapeutic riding or adaptive riding. And you can see where the confusion is. The word therapeutic implies therapy, even though you're not with a therapist. So that gets very confusing for a lot of people. Medical providers, it gets confusing. So that is why we are really trying to use the word adaptive riding, because that gives a nice, very easy black and white to what each one is. Adaptive riding or therapeutic riding, the main objective is to learn how to ride a horse. They are not looking at the sensory integration. They are not looking at the strengthening. We're going to look at all of that. But again, we can't take that away from being with the horses, but it's not the intention. And the intention, when you are truly looking at physical or sensory integration or emotional, you want someone who can zoom in on those areas, because they're going to know how to highlight what you are trying to obtain. So those are the really biggest questions. And all of this, guys, again, depends on the intention of why you are looking for one of these services. We see swings used all the time as therapists. Therapists use swings all the time. Swings are also at playgrounds. It's not the first time that we've had to separate using one for therapy and one for recreation. It just depends on what your intention is when you are using your swing, whether it is you're looking for that sensory input, you're looking for vestibular changes, postural, whatever it is that you're using that swing for. But then when you look at it for the recreation part, you are not zooming in on all of that. So again, that's the difference between the two. One is really looking at riding skills, and one is really looking at obtaining those functional, changeable goals for your loved ones. The therapeutic riding instructors or adaptive riding instructors don't need a special license as a medical provider does. There are some schools that are now putting out therapeutic or adaptive riding certifications, but most of the instructors can go to a course. They take their course. It's a wonderful course. Therapeutic riding, adaptive riding has tremendous benefits, but it is not therapy. And that's really what I want you to remember. So hippotherapy. You're going to see with these, we're looking at the main intention and then the possible side effect. And all of these side effects are good for these participants. And this is because, again, we are zooming in, looking at it, but that does not mean the horse is not providing a whole bunch of other really beautiful benefits that we will see the outcomes for. So some of the main reasons that you might be contacting a provider for hippotherapy is core strength, ambulation, sensory integration, motor planning, speech production, social skills. There's a huge variety of reasons why people want to partner their loved ones with horses. And this is just some of them. And if these are the areas that you are hoping to have the greatest impact on, you're going to want to look for a therapist. Some of the possible side effects that are going to happen without us even trying is they're going to have confidence. All of a sudden they are sitting up on top of that big horse, and there is a very great feeling for them in that, because a lot of times they are free. They are not being told to sit still. They are not being buckled into a chair. They are free on the back of these horses, and it's really, really beautiful. Decreased anxiety. And this one is really interesting because it's via heart rate. There's a beautiful research study done by the Heart Math Institute. And what they looked at is they realized that people and horses can impact each other's heart rates. And you might be thinking, Melissa, that's great, but what does that have to do with anxiety? Horses' heart rates is usually around 40 beats per minute, which is much lower than most humans, especially when those humans get stressed out or nervous, right? Our heart rate shoots through the roof. If you are standing within 4 feet, 4 feet is the researched distance. If you're standing within 4 feet of a calm horse and you take some breaths, your heart rate will also lower. It's called cardiac coherency, and it's a beautiful side effect that none of us can change at all. That is happening anyway. It's a beautiful side effect. Improved emotional control. A lot of times the participants want to please their horse. And so they will really work hard not to have any emotional outbursts or anything that will scare their horse. They work on doing that because they care about that horse so much and care about spending time with that horse. They know that if it becomes unsafe, they will have to get off. And that is usually a huge motivator, which is really important and difficult when we have so many children that are difficult to motivate. Finding something that motivates them, finding something that they really love helps tremendously. And horses, for me, have been such a motivating tool. I see results that I normally wouldn't see had I been inside an outpatient clinic or some other settings. What I see with the horses is so much brighter. And that is because the horses are giving a holistic picture right back to these participants. Some contraindications. Now, this is from the American Hippotherapy Association, and all professional organizations have developed these contraindications and precaution lists as guides for the providers. They are all based on safety. One thing to remember is therapists have the right to change them depending on the therapist's own physical health or their horse's health. So just because you might be looking at this and saying, oh yeah, little Johnny doesn't have any of that, we should be good to go. But if little Johnny is 170 pounds, he might not be able to find a provider as easily because that provider might not have a horse that can carry that amount of weight, especially on bareback. Or maybe that therapist has his or her own physical injuries that doesn't allow them to see somebody that size. So this is just, again, for safety, but don't be surprised if as you are reaching out to providers, they might have additional ones. And that, again, is for the safety of either the therapist and the horse, or possibly both. It's absolutely possible that it can be for both of them. And briefly, I mentioned the bareback pad. Because hippotherapy is looking at equine movement and how to translate that to the participant, we are typically on bareback pads. And that is because we want them as close to the movement as possible. As soon as we start adding saddles in, it starts raising them above the movement points and it starts muting the movement. So that is one reason why you would see a bareback pad in those sessions. Here are some precautions. So the precautions just meaning it's something that the therapist needs to be aware of, making sure that they have a horse and things that they are comfortable with themselves treating. But that does not mean it's a contraindication. It just means something that we need to keep in the back of our heads. Adaptive riding. Again, guys, remember the main reason you are looking into this activity. So the main intention when you are calling an adaptive riding center is you want your loved ones or yourself to learn how to ride a horse with an instructor that is skilled and trained in teaching in a variety of ways. You could almost think of it as your regular ed teacher and your special ed teacher. Special ed teacher usually knows how to communicate and can try different varieties to get the point across and help everyone learn in the classroom. That's exactly what the therapeutic riding instructors do. They are teaching your loved ones how to ride a horse in a way that will make them proud to ride the horse, that will make them excited and happy. So you're going to be looking into this if you want your loved one to learn how to ride a horse, but you know that they might not be appropriate for some show barns or some of the other environments. Because you're looking for a recreation activity. This is a really big one, because finding a recreation activity, not only that your child wants to be involved in, but that you feel good about sending them to, is sometimes really difficult. The horse provides such a safe environment, like we saw in that research earlier, The horse provides such a safe environment for these participants. It really is a beautiful recreation activity for them. You need to get your kid moving. This is another big one, right? We need to get our children moving, keep them healthy. If your child falls into one of those, but they don't really need a therapist intervention, by all means, look into some adaptive riding for them. It's a great way to get the exercise in. The horse gives them their legs, so they don't have to necessarily do it, but they're still going to get the cardiac input and demands placed on it. Possible side effects, again, the confidence. That's a huge one that we see. That I think that we see that in pretty much all participants across the board. Now, here's where we get into the possible side effects of that improved strength, of the sensory integration, of the focus, which now those were some of the main intentions that we were looking at when we thought about hippotherapy. This can happen even though it is not your main intention, but it will be much slower, if at all. These might happen if the child is partnered with the correct horse. And that's really where the equine movement and the equine specialist and the therapist need to come together to figure out which horses are best. But again, the adaptive riding is your recreation. You're looking for fun. You're looking how to ride a horse, looking for something really just different for your child to partake in. Here are the adaptive riding contraindications and precautions. Again, these are mostly for safety and all for safety. And it can also be left up to the provider, to the riding instructor, on whether they have the horse or the ability to take on a client. So I made this slide hoping that it's helpful, because so many people come to me and they're like, Melissa, I just want to get my kid on a horse. Great. I love getting kids on horses, so let's talk. So one of the first things I ask parents is, how old is your child? Because if we are going to even consider adaptive riding, they need to be old enough to be able to learn to ride a horse, like following directions, keeping their body upright, knowing they're off the ground. These are all things that some children at age 4 don't have. And some centers even say age 7. The center that I am partnered with, they say age 4, which is why I have age 4 on here. Some centers are a little bit higher. But if your child is under age 4, adaptive riding is not for them. It's too much too soon. Doesn't mean that they won't go on to that at some point. It just means safety-wise, they should be with a therapist. If they are over that, okay, now we can look at both programs. Then we get to the biggest question I ask every parent I speak to. What is your intention for putting them on a horse? What are you looking for in this relationship? Are you looking for therapy? Are you looking for those strengths? Are you looking for the postural control? Are you looking for the sensory integration? Are you looking for the speech production? If you are, then look for a therapist, because then you are going to be getting exactly what you are hoping for, or at least the best attempt at what you are looking for. Or are you looking at recreation? We need recreation activities for all children. We all know that. So if you're just looking for your child to be able to go out, be confident and proud of themselves for something that they are learning how to do, then recreation is the way to go. You might get some of those other side effects, you might not, but at least your main intention is going to be met. And that is always the leading factor in this decision, is what you are hoping for your child to come out with. So are you looking for therapy? Fantastic. Let's look at the contraindications. Are there contraindications present or not present? If contraindications are present, or there are no contraindications, however, for a variety of reasons that participant cannot be put on a horse, ground is always an option. Yes, you are not going to get the equine movement, but the bonding, which we are going to talk about later, is really beautiful. And you can bond with a horse so much faster and quicker on the ground than you can mounted. And so if you are looking for like empathy training or just general connection for your child to practice, you might want to look at ground sessions with either a therapist or an adaptive riding instructor, because that happens a lot faster on the ground. We don't always need to ride the horse to get the benefit. And that is really important for you to remember as you're thinking about what your intentions are. If your intentions are really for little Johnny to learn how to build relationships and trust, I would say riding would be like 7 sessions in, because those first couple sessions, you need to set the foundation just like you would any other relationship. The great part is the horse is not going to judge them. The horse doesn't care how old they are. The horse is just going to be there. And hopefully, as long as they're paired correctly, you have a therapist that's pairing them correctly, the horse is going to want that connection just as much as little Johnny. So sometimes you might have someone who you're really hoping to have adaptive riding, you want the recreation. However, some of their contraindications, because they are not medical professionals, they're a little bit tighter than those of hippotherapy who are with the medical professionals. So if you are looking into adaptive riding, but you saw something on there that is a contraindication, you might be looking into hippotherapy just to keep everybody safe. Remember, these contraindications and precautions are to keep everyone safe. Psychotherapy partnered with horses. This is really becoming a very, very fast area that is growing. In 2012, research described the horse as knowing the inner world of a client, and the inner world of the client was expressed through the interactions with his or her own horse. And I believe this one was done with Egala. The horse truly does resonate with what is happening inside of a person. So we talk about a lot of times being incongruent, which just means your facial expressions, your body posture is different than what's happening on the inside. That could be like, I'm smiling, everything is great, but on the inside, I am just having a really bad day, or I'm really anxious. The horse doesn't really look at our face at all. He's going right into the inside to see, oh, she's a little anxious. And if we see that horse responding in a way that alerts us that that person is anxious, we can then say, all right, you know what? Let's take a step back, take a couple deep breaths. And that way we are able to help the participant join with the horse. And that's all done by really watching the horses. The horses are just these giant biofeedback machines of our emotions. Also, biofeedback, when we have a participant sitting on their back, I can look at the way a horse is moving and know if someone is tight in their adductors, or if their, their core strength or their rectus isn't engaged. Just by the way the horse is moving, I can typically tell what I need to work on and address with my clients. Much easier. The horse is always giving us information. We just have to be alert enough and open enough to say, oh yeah, the horse is actually picking up on something I totally missed. Here's a beautiful research study. It was 10 weeks long. And what they found was after 10 weeks, these 5 adults who had long-term psychiatric histories had a beautiful sense of self-efficacy and self-esteem after this. I totally butchered that word and I'm sorry. But guys, this was life-changing for them. These horses provided them with something they couldn't find on their own. And sometimes talk therapy just isn't enough. And this played a huge part in them. They also did another study in 2004 with 16 children, all who had anger management issues. And what they saw was reduced anger, improved quality of life, and improved self-esteem. How awesome is that? These kids got the help they needed and they were young. So that gives me so much hope for them as they move forward. And sure, they might need tune-ups along the way, but just the fact that their time with the horses made such a difference in their well-being. And as you can see, also fostering healthy relationships, which is important for all of us. Like I said, after COVID, I know my own social skills went out the window, along with my children. All of a sudden, they became animals at restaurants. So the healthy relationships, social structure, all of that, the horses provide all of that in just this beautiful, non-judgmental way. If something upsets them, they walk away. There's no yelling, there's no outbursts. The horse just simply says, this is not for me, turns and walks away. And it's a beautiful lesson for all of us. And the more we all get to see that and experience it, the more likely we are that we're going to start implementing some of that into our own lives as well. equine assisted learning. This now has encompassed the equine assisted coaching as well, so that it's the newest to come through, also very fast growing, but not a lot of research. What they did find was that through equine assisted learning, it helps promote leadership, communication, body language, body awareness, relationship building, teamwork building. And as you can see, a lot of this, that emotional and mental aspect, they really do kind of go together. What I can tell you is we have many schools that partner with the program that I am at that come once a month for their sessions. And it's amazing. The teachers' feedback, some of the children who typically have emotional outbursts in classrooms, we don't see it at the farm. We don't see these emotional outbursts at farms. Children that are typically runners, they like to run. We don't see that at the farm. And it's beautiful. And it gives the children a chance to just take a breath and learn in an environment that feels really safe to them. And I hope that more research is going to come out on why this happens. And my hypothesis on that is that cardiac coherency that we spoke about. I have a feeling that plays a huge role in it, because once our heart rates come down and our body is able to switch out of a stressful fight or flight and into a calmer aspect, you can learn, you can just function better, your body's going to feel better. As time goes on, I have a feeling that's where the research is going to be going with most of this. But again, all of that, again, we're zooming in to like look at how we can partner with horses for the best well-being, for our best intention. However, it's affecting all of this together. And that's why horses are so holistic when we are looking at partnering with them. And all of it needs to be taken into account. Okay, now we get to look at all of the variety of programs available. Now that we have done that, we are going to look at the commonly asked questions. And I really, really hope that by looking at these commonly asked questions, you'll be able to move forward and make the right choice for your loved one, for your family, for whomever is looking for it. So the 4 questions we're going to be looking at is, how can I find a provider? Is it covered by insurance? What is the typical length of a session? And what is the cost? Those are always, besides the one that we've already answered, and we know that therapeutic riding or adaptive riding and hippotherapy are not the same thing. Now we can move on to these other ones. So the good news is now you are clear on the different programs, right? We are clear that if you are looking for a mental health provider, you're probably going to look at EGALA. If you're looking for therapy, you're going to look at the American Hippotherapy Association. If you're looking for adaptive recreation, you're going to be looking at PATH. Now that you know what you're looking for, it's going to be so much easier to find someone, and someone who's actually going to be able to help you get to that main intention, that main goal of why you're even looking for this. And this is where Google and word of mouth is going to be your best friend. But towards the end, I do list the organizations so that you can just write them down and look them up. All of them have find a provider page. But really the best referrals are going to come from fellow parents. Ask your children's therapists, ask around, see what other people are doing, see who they are providing with, and just ask lots of questions. But usually most of my referrals come from word of mouth from fellow parents or therapists. And that seems to be the best way for everyone to find what they're looking for. What is the cost of a lesson or session? This is a fantastic question, and this is going to depend. Remember, you have to think about what you're looking for, right? So if you're looking for therapy, it is going to be more costly than looking for recreation. And that is just because now you have a medical provider versus an adaptive instructor. And because both of them are partnering with horses, it is expensive. However, most therapists will be charging within what a unit charge is for your area. That's just ethically appropriate that they are not charging $5 million or anything over $200 for their sessions. For a PT, OT, or speech, mental health does get a little bit, sometimes over $200. So it's also going to vary greatly depending on where you live. If you live in an area that has lots of horses around, well, then you're going to be more likely to find what you're looking for, and it also to be at a little bit more of a competitive rate, right? That definitely does play a part in it. The recreation lessons, they can start anywhere from $20. Some even have it for free, depending on how that organization is run, up to about $150 for an adaptive riding lesson. And again, remember that is recreation based. A therapy session, the cheapest that I have heard of is $90 for a 30-minute session, but it can go up to $250, again, depending on what you are looking for, the skill of the therapist. All of that comes into account with what you're looking for, just like as it would if you were looking for, aquatic therapy. It all plays into part as well. The typical length of a session. Again, this varies depending if it's recreation or therapy. Most, if not all, sessions are 60 minutes or less. What I really want to make a point of is that in that 60 minutes, it might not all be mounted work. And that's really important to understand, because 60 minutes on a horse is exhausting. When we are partnering and we are putting our clients on top of these horses, they are getting 2,500 facilitation steps every 25 minutes. That's a huge amount of reps. Huge, 2,500. That's insane. Anything over that, you are going to toast that poor client out. Your child's going to be exhausted. So yes, you are going to find some that are 45 minutes or are 60 minutes, but also remember, it's not all mounted work. And there has been some research, and I think we'll find more research saying like anything over 30 minutes sometimes actually does the opposite, because it fatigues them to a point where they are not good in therapy or school the next day, or they start having behavior problems because they're so exhausted and their body hurts, but maybe they don't have the communication to tell you that. So this is where you need to make sure that your therapist and you are talking. I always tell parents to let me know how the child reacts after the sessions, especially if I'm changing the time duration or I'm changing the setup, if I'm changing the environment. All of that means it's more work for my client, and I want to know how they do. I don't want to do too much too soon. So that is what typically you're looking at for the length of sessions: 60 minutes, 30 minutes, somewhere in between there. And that's just going to depend on your provider, their horses, all that good stuff. Is this covered by insurance? This is the million-dollar question. And this is going to vary greatly depending on your insurance carrier and provider. I will tell you that Blue Cross and Blue Shield and Aetna have exclusions with anything to do with horses. They consider it to be an experiment and not necessarily beneficial. They don't believe that there is enough research on it. And we disagree with them. And as a provider, I have sent them more research and such than that I can even tell you now. But the truth is, I understand the confusion because some of the research gets it wrong. And that does not help our point. So this is why using those correct terms is really, really important, because I want everyone who wants or needs hippotherapy to be able to get it covered. And it breaks my heart when the insurance company is like, you got a horse, forget it. When in actuality, it shouldn't matter if I have a horse or a swing or a ball. We're all here to help, but these insurance companies are the two that have the biggest exclusions. And that goes across the board, whether you're looking for PT, OT, speech, or psychology. Anything to do with a horse, they have very strict exclusions on. Of course, you can always challenge it yourself as a parent, and parents have the best chance of challenging that over a provider. So this is just the rest of us, right? The rest of us, it's just gonna depend. I will call your insurance company and ask if they allow out of network, because most of the therapists that partner with horses are out of network. There are some that are in, so that would be the first thing to find out, if that therapist is in network or out of network with which insurance company. If they are out of network, you can call your insurance company and ask for what their out of network benefits are, and just ask them if there are any exclusions to that. You don't have to necessarily say you're using a horse, because again, it really shouldn't matter. But you're asking them, what are the exclusions I need to be aware of? If they say the horse is one of them, okay, it's up to you if you want to take on challenging that, which any therapist is going to readily give you resources and research to help you in that fight. I know I have an entire packet I hand my parents who are trying to fight the insurance company. And I'm like, here you go. This is the packet. It has the most up-to-date research, everything that you need. Let's try. I haven't won yet, but I will. I will. I keep changing the research. I'm going to win. It's going to happen one of these days. Also, you guys want to look into your organizations. The Prader-Willi Foundation has a scholarship directly for clients who have Prader-Willi and they want to partner with horses. So different associations, different foundations. The program that you might be looking into has a scholarship program. I know my program has a scholarship program for those who would otherwise not be able to participate in these activities or therapies. So there are a lot of ways. Get creative. Reach out to the Lions Club. Reach out to the school PTAs. I do have had PTAs, SEPTAs fund a couple of sessions as well. So reach out. You never know until you ask. And I'm a firm believer, just keep asking. You will get a yes. You just got to find the right person. Providers and more information. So here are the websites for the three main ones that you've heard me speak about. PATH International, which is your recreational activities. The American Hippotherapy Association, which is for your therapists, your PT, OT, or speech. And then EGALA, which is going to be for your mental health. Each of these organizations has on their page a Find a Provider section. Go to Find the Provider, put in your zip code, and see what comes up. Start making your phone calls. And there is my email as well. If you are still having questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Either myself or one of my therapists will respond to you. It usually takes about 3 to 5 days, depending on the season. Spring and fall are my busiest times. So it might take a little bit longer in those times, but please reach out. I don't want people to feel lost in this. I want to help you find what you're looking for and help you help your loved ones. And so that's my intention for this entire presentation. And I really hope that I was able to make it clearer for you. I wish you all luck.